Well, hello there. Jimmy P. Brown II, aka JPBII, coming at you with another deep dive. This time around, the self titled Deliverance 1989. Stay tuned. Well, hello there, YouTubers, Facebookers, and all other onlookers. Jimmy P. Brown II coming at you with another deep dive. This time, the album Deliverance, self titled 1989. Well, I know it's been a while. I'm sure, I've gotten some emails wondering what happened. Not a lot, which either makes me and leads me to believe nobody really gives a rat's, or, you know, maybe nobody noticed. I don't know. But it has been a while, but I'm glad to be doing another one because I have read a lot of requests for them. People seem to really enjoy the deep dive on River Disturbance. So I thought, let's go ahead and do one for the first album as to it. There was a lot of requests for it. So there you go. So glad to go ahead and let's dive deep into the 1989 release. The cool thing about this release, I think, is it was a collection of songs that we'd already been playing for 4 years together. Primarily the nucleus of myself, Chris Hyde, and Brian Carula, as we'd been playing together for so long. So it was just very easy for us to go in there, knock the songs out. There was a few that we left out, but it was, for the most part, most of the concert mainstays that we played. We left out songs like Fortress and Hold On Tightly, only because stylistically, I thought they weren't, on par with everything else that was going on. They were more early songs that we used to do. Who Will Save the Children, Space Called You. Although Space Called You and Attack were used on California Metal a few years earlier, so that's why we opted not to re-record those. It was really cool. Glenn had contacted Bill Metoyer, Glenn Rogers, contacted Bill Metoyer, and through a lot of his different buddies in Dark Angel and Viking, and Bill took us on. He loved what he heard, and it was cool getting to actually go into the studio and record all these songs that we'd been playing for years. And I think it came out great. The album is affectionately known as the Blood Splat album, due to the cover, obviously. But yeah, it being our self-titled debut, we wanted it to just showcase what we'd already been doing. The new writing and writing for a record, that didn't happen until Weapons and going forward. Um, Otherwise, I would just write songs, bring them to rehearsal, and we'd play them. And once it felt right and sounded good, I'd write lyrics or go out there and fake it and come up with lyrics on the spot, and then just kind of write lyrics around that. Um, that happened a lot, by the way. It happened a lot. Um, but we had so much fun. Those first 5 years, I cannot tell you. It's just lots of energy, lots of blood, sweat, and tears. Me, Brian, and Chris, man, just hammering those songs out. And of course, we had Larry for the first couple of years. From '85 to '87. Then a couple other guys in between, and then of course Glenn Rogers joined us in late '87 and went into to record this first album, and then departed. Um, yeah, so there was a lot of cool things happening with this release. A lot of sadness too at losing Glenn. Um, But we knew big things were coming, and we were. I mean, we started selling out our album release parties and going on tour, doing all that, and it just led to bigger and bigger things, bigger shows, and playing all over the world. It was cool. So was really excited about that. Plus, getting to hear us on the radio, that was kind of trick. I enjoyed that. Nothing like working for 4 years and then all of a sudden turning on radio stations and getting to hear your songs. It's a cool experience. It's a cool feeling, especially for a kid. You know, I remember I started Deliverance when I was 15. So, but enough of that. Let's go ahead and get into the tunage. First song up, Victory. Victory. What a fun song. First thing that always comes to my head whenever I think of the song is I wrote it like 3 days before we played this festival out in Riverside called the His Festival. It's the first time we were ever invited to play one of these Christian festivals. And so we were excited. We were the opening band going on at like noon or 12:30 or something like that. And I remember we had just played the night before, and I remember not wanting to be the opening band, and me, Brian, and Chris kind of bummed about it. And this was going to be one of two of last shows for Larry Farkas with us because he was moving on and joining Vengeance. In fact, what's funny is he came out at his festival wearing a Vengeance shirt. And I remember telling him right after the first song, after Victory, I told him take that shirt off, so he went shirtless the rest of the show. Yeah, we were upset that he was leaving, but all that to say this: Victory was written 2 or 3 days. I remember showing it to Larry, showing it to Chris, explaining to Chris, you know, da 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 da, and then breaks, da 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 da, and then I want his thunderous double bass, you know, and. Yeah, we worked it out like 3 or 4 times, and it just worked. And what's funny is you go back and we go back and watch the video, and it sounds just like the way we played it every time going forward, and even on the record, and the video or the Greetings of Death demo as well. It's we just played it the same. The band was very tight. We were always together, always rehearsing 2-3 times a week. And that nucleus of myself, Brian, and Chris, the rhythm section, just very, very tight with each other. And yeah, those were good times. Speaking of time, next song, No Time.
Opened up the book and said, your name I can
So I was 14, and I remember being out with our church youth group and the witnessing day or something like that. And there happened to be another group out there doing street witnessing or whatever. And they one of the guys just came and handed me this sheet of paper, and I took a look at it, and it just said author unknown, no time. And it was kind of almost verbatim what I ended up using on the actual song "No Time" itself. I changed a few things here and there, but uh, in fact, I'll never forget when I submitted the album credits to Frontline all those years later, uh, and I put music by Jimmy B. Brown and then lyrics by author unknown. They didn't want that, so they just put music and lyrics Jimmy Brown. But I didn't write those lyrics. So um, I remember being intrigued by the idea. I thought it was kind of mean, and this whole you don't have time for God, God won't have time for you. Seemed a little human and retaliatory versus what I was believing God to be. But nonetheless, I thought it was a cool concept and idea for a song, especially something aggressive and heavy. And so it worked out. So we used it for that song, No Time, and it's still a concert favorite. We just played a few shows here in Missouri and Texas and Ohio, and yeah, it's still a concert favorite to this very day.
Well, look around, tell me what you see. People running nowhere, thinking they're free. The path they're on leads to destruction, but do they see? They think they're having fun, but it's all a fantasy. But we've been sent from the master. We've been sent with the message of hope. We've been given the keys to the kingdom to unlock the chains and bonds.
Song Deliverance was literally the second song we ever played together as a band. The first being a song called Celebrate. Initially, it was called the Worm Song because whenever we played it at rehearsal, me and Chris Hyde and our first bass player Manny Morales, then Manny Morales, or not no, it was Alan Bostwick on bass, then Manny Morales, and then Brian Carilla. Whenever we played it, my sister would hear it, us practicing in the garage, and she said she could always in her head see a little worm, coming out of an apple and dancing. So we called it the Worm Song. It's silly. Anywho, but the second song I remember writing was the song Deliverance, and it's cool riff, dun 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 dun. Reminded me of Queen of the Reich, and I don't know, thought it was cool. So, but I just I listen to the chorus and I think, yeah, that was the essence of what Deliverance was about back then in those first 4 years. We've been sent from the Master. We've been sent with a message of hope. We've been given the keys to the kingdom to unlock chains and bonds. Deliverance. And yeah, that was Deliverance. I mean, very evangelical. The whole album's very evangelical, with the exception of a couple of songs, and we'll talk about that. Next song, If You Will.
There is only right and wrong. There is no in between. The wrong will only blind your
So, if you will, the call. They both run into each other. They're two separate songs, certainly, but they run into each other. And that's intentional. We did that live. I remember I wanted a really great opening song and something that would open up a live show really well. And, Chris just banging on the snare. I thought, oh, yeah, we'll have time. We'll walk out. In fact, we did that song for the first time in like 30 years on these string of shows that we did. Open up the shows with, if you will. It's a fun song going into the call. But yeah, man, it's got this power, it's got this vibe, and cool, intricate riffing. Everything that Deliverance was about, musically, feel and lyric. Back then, I think, if you will, and the call embody that. Going into the call, same thing, very straightforward evangelical type lyrics. And, I look back at my lyrics back then and they were written by a 15-year-old kid. I mean, that's just the reality of it. And, but, and I'm not ashamed of them at all by any stretch. That's where I was at that time. But certainly not as poetic as I would prefer them to be, but that's okay. Again, written by a 15, 16-year-old kid, it is what it is. But good music, good vibe, good crunchiness. I always laugh when I hear the call because I remember always George saying it was his favorite song, even when he wasn't in the band. In the early days of Deliverance, he said he would stop what he was doing to go hear us play that song and then leave after that because he wasn't really into the fast stuff. But yeah, the call is just a great crunchiness, and then leads really nicely into side two.
Though you speak with tongues of angels, this is so long ago. That is not the motive, baby. You're as evil as a bird. There's not a man who can withstand the sacrifice of Calvary and God's own Lamb.
So no love. No love is probably the first time I tried to write something admonishing the church for something I'd been seeing going on for years. And especially growing up in a Pentecostal church and, just all these emphasis on the spiritual gifts and all that kind of stuff. It was, but a lot of judgment and a lot of just flat out being mean and rude to people. And I remember not digging that at all. And so, reading that passage where Paul talks about, though I speak with tongues of angels and have not love, I'm but a sounding bell. In other words, you can do healings, you can do miracles, you can do all of this. And you can speak in tongues louder than anybody. But, if you don't have love, what's the point? And yeah, because the greatest of these is love. And yeah, so I took my hand at writing, and I thought it came out pretty cool. Musically, it's a fun song, a lot of fun to play. And it was my first homage on recording to pay to the Res Band, that whole middle section, the a total homage to Res Band, a song called The Chair, which those of my patrons have heard the cover of The Chair that I've done. And that was such a fun song to do. Me and Jim had so much fun doing that song. But yeah, but yeah, it was just a fun song to play. But I think lyrically, I'm pretty proud of those lyrics. They pack a power punch. They're not the ridiculous, insidious, over judgmental, ridiculous lyrics of "What a Joke," but I think they got their point across. Blood of the Covenant. It's funny. Back then, because we're practicing all the time. Deliverance was, at first it was slow to get off the ground, but once we moved on to rehearsing when we rejoined forces together, because we were on and off for a little bit, and then in '86 when it became, me, Chris Hyde, Larry Farkas, and Brian Carilla, no, that's it. We just started practicing all the time, and it was great. We were just having so much fun with one another, and yeah, it was just a cool time, really cool time. But I would write songs. I'd just bring them to rehearsal. Sometimes I would just bring a riff, and then it would just turn into a song. Everybody would just start concentrating on that one riff, and it would just turn into something. Maybe it only was perfecting that one riff for that one time, but then it would turn into something later. Things just progressed, and it was always happening like that, like it should be for any band that's getting together and jamming all the time. But yeah, lyrically, it was one of those, oh gosh, I need lyrics. So I just kind of came up with something, and we were intimidated. I know I was intimidated by, the Vengeance and the other bands that were starting to come around that were kind of starting to talk about the blood and the gore so I remember kind of writing the lyrics from that perspective. Still biblically based, but it's kind of like almost mindlessly saying things as opposed to really trying to reach people with an absolute. And but nonetheless, it's a fun song. A lot of cool movement to it. So yeah, Blood of the Covenant, cool jam. It's fun. Hard to play in some spots, but it's a fun song.
Jehovah Gyra, my provider, His grace is sufficient for me. Jehovah Gyra, my provider, His grace is sufficient for me. The Lord will provide all your needs according to His riches and glory. The Lord will provide Himself the lamb for sacrifice. Jehovah Jireh takes care of me.
Jehovah Gyra, I'll never forget showing up to rehearsal, and my longtime guitar tech, Jimmy Griffin. And not only guitar tech, he was my bud in high school, and he was Helen's buddy in grade school. I mean, all the way back to like fourth, fifth grade. And so he's just a good friend to the family. And I miss him dearly. He's not with us anymore. But I remember bringing this to the rehearsal hall, and he was just like, yeah, I don't think this is a good idea, Jimmy. It's sacrilegious. And I'm like, no, it's not. It's not sacrilegious. Music is music. It's a tool. It's the intent behind it. And I want to worship God with this song. So, and There might have been some truth to it. I don't know. I go back and forth as I get older. Nonetheless, I remember we did the arrangements, and it's like I told everybody, this is something that everybody can sing along with us if they're church folk. And we had become Christian entertainers at that point. So it made sense for me that we do that. So that's what we did. And the band loved it. And so we were, they were a little scared too, I don't know if this is a good idea, but we did it and it worked. And like I said, we had great sing-alongs at all the shows from that point on. So it's a fun song, and I really enjoyed playing it last year. When we played the Immortal Fest last year, we played Jehovah Gyra, and it was a lot of fun. Cool song. Next up, Temporary Insanity.
Insanity is filling me with unreality. My mind is a pit of morbid fantasy. The more my mind wanders, the more I indulge. I'm a menace so unhonorable, the more real it becomes. Imagine need of pain, and you are my pain. You said you set me free. Is this temporary insanity?
So Temporary Insanity, I remember Glenn Rogers bringing that and saying that he played it with some other band, and didn't have lyrics though. But man, what a great song! And I think what I loved most about it was that it showcased Chris Hyde's just thunderous double bass. That it was just so tight, powerful. It was great. And in fact, I'll never forget Ted Kirkpatrick, rest in peace, calling me, and I remember we were just talking about, and he just loved Temporary Insanity, loved that pace, that tempo, the cadence of that digga dagga digga dagga digga dagga. And it's funny, you hear that a lot on the first Tourniquet record. You hear that same pace, that same cadence of that digga dagga digga dagga. Yeah, Chris just was a beast at double bass. Loved showcasing, and I think that album really showcased how good he really really was. One of my favorite things I'll never forget. I told Chris Hyde when trying to convince he and the band, that we're going speed metal, and they were so afraid of it. They were just not comfortable with the idea because they thought it was satanic. And I told Chris, I'm going to make you the Dave Lombardo of Christian metal. And he's like, who's Dave Lombardo? I thought that was funny. But Temporary Insanity, cool song. I remember when being tasked with writing the lyrics, I was sitting with one of my buddies, Shelley Robbins, and she's like, oh my God, I have a song, or I have a poem I was writing, and I used that line, Temporary Insanity, and or at least insanity. And so she brought it to me and showed it to me. And yeah, insanity is filling me with unreality. My mind is a pit of morbid fantasy. And I said, hey, can I take that for the song? And she says, yeah, go ahead. So I forgot to credit her on the album, but I thanked her in the liner notes, I think, of the first album. I'm pretty sure I did, for the first line of Temporary Insanity. But yeah, cool song. A lot of fun. And then I think the last song now we're on, let me double check here. Are we already at it? Yeah, we are. Awake. So Wake is again one of those songs, but I actually tried to lyrically paint a story. First time I remember approaching it that way, trying to paint a story. And, and the hilarious part about it, what makes me laugh about it, is no one throughout all the years questioned, the fact that it was so not scriptural. I mean, it's completely not scriptural because the Bible even says that, no one would be allowed to come back from hell and tell, but even if somebody did, it wouldn't work. And here, the whole premise of the story is somebody dying, go to hell, and then given the chance to come back and tell people and warn them of hell. So I thought that part's kind of corny, but nonetheless, cool story. I thought it was good storytelling. And I really still to this day enjoy the intro because, Bill Metoyer had produced Hell Awaits from Slayer. And I remember telling him, man, that whole intro scared me. I hated listening to it in the dark. And I want that kind of intro for this. So he did it. And he used another intro that me, Marcus Colon, and Jimmy Griffin had worked on, and that we were trying to record for live performances and never used, but and we used that and kind of mixed it all together. So it's kind of funny, but it worked out. Great song, a lot of fun, and me trying to sing like Jeff Tate. I'll never forget Bill Metoyer laughing about that, and he said you sound great, but yeah, it's a little ridiculous too, Jeff Tate. So first album, I have to say I'm proud of it. I'm proud of the fact that it's the only album in the Deliverance catalog that ranks on Metal Hammer's top 50 metal albums of all time. It also is in the top 100, I think, of Heaven's Metal. And it's the only Deliverance album on there. I'm very, very proud of the record. It was a cool first release for us. And, I hear so many different bands talk about their first album and say how embarrassing and everything else. I'm not embarrassed of it at all. Even through the 15-year-old lyrics or whatever, the 15-year-old kids lyrics, I'm still not embarrassed by it. I think it's a great record. I think it showcased well what we had been doing together as a band for 4 years in the LA scene. And I really, really dig that aspect of it. It resonates with people because Christians and non-Christians alike all love it. I remember Glenn Benton from Deicide telling me how much he loved the album. So it's cool that it touched so many people in so many different ways. And like I said, some of the songs are just mainstays for our sets to this day, 40 years later. Because, Deliverance will be 40 years old next year. So, but, The Call is still in our set. No Time is still in our set. If You Will is still in our set all these years later. And that first album will always be a landmark for the future of anything Deliverance. That was the sign that said, there you go, pointing the way. And so I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this deep dive today. And as always, visit my website, www.jpbii.com, and for anything upcoming. And of course, deliverance23.com. And if you feel so inclined to be one of my patrons, please come by for as little as $5 a month to www.patreon.com/JPBII. Otherwise, we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for your patience. And I hope you enjoyed this deep dive of the first Deliverance album. Peace.
Don't be fooled. This world ain't what your nation's real.